Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us tonight. We have another client education series here for the first quarter. Based on the attendee list, I can see I pretty much know everybody here. You guys are all good clients of ours, and you know me, Tom Gilliam, certified financial planner, licensed investment advisor. Carillon Group is our firm here in Chesterfield, Missouri. A couple housekeeping items. First of all, this is a private webinar, so I appreciate you spending some time with us this evening. The other thing is I encourage you as we go along in the webinar to be able to ask questions of our guest speaker. And we're going to have a Q&A at the end. So if you think of any questions while Amy's going along, if you want to jot them down and remember, you know, she's here, we have her time. We're very appreciative of that. And so if you have any questions, I'll go through those at the end. And they'll all be anonymous questions as well. So ask away anything you need. Let's get started. So tonight's topic, as you know, long-term care, it's about a plan. And while I know it's not really a joyful or it's not a pleasant topic necessarily to talk about, but it is a very important one. And it's really a critical piece of a sound retirement plan. And being in the business 25 years and working with a lot of clients, as you know, I have a lot of clients that are retired and pre-retirees, but I have clients in their 90s, 80s, 70s, and I've seen it firsthand how when the need for care arises, and we're not just talking about like nursing home care and things like that, that's usually at the end, and Amy will talk more about that. But when the need for care arises, it can significantly impact a retirement plan, but also, you know, emotionally, especially in a husband-wife situation for the healthy caretaking spouse. There's emotional, financial impact, and this is why it's important, where possible, that we talk about planning for long-term care before you actually need it. Why? So there's a plan in place. So you have a plan in place so that if you decide, hey, you know what, we're going to try to have some resources available that can help us out, the time to do it is when you're healthy and, you know, generally early on in either pre-retirement or early retirement years, younger and healthier. That's the time to really address what would we do if something like this happened to us? What's our plan going to be? Let me introduce our guest speaker, Amy Lozier. And Amy is the national spokeswoman for long-term care with Ash Brokerage. Ash Brokerage is one of our partners we've used for many, many, many years for certain types of solutions that we need. And she's been with Ash Brokerage since 2007 as a long-term care specialist. Before that, Amy worked as a consultant with Accenture, Anderson Consulting. Her certifications include Certified Long-Term Care Professional and Long-Term Care Insurance Professional. She's been performing long-term care educational sessions since 2007, and recently, I think it was a month ago or so, to a large group of elder law attorneys and CPAs in Columbia, Missouri. Finally, she's a graduate of University of Kansas. Oh, no, we won't hold that against you, being Mizzou country, but I kid, of course. But I'd like to welcome Amy and appreciate her time this evening. And I'm going to turn it over to you, Amy, to go ahead and begin our presentation. And again, at the end, we're going to do Q&A. And ultimately, if there are some, if this piques your interest and you would like to explore a little more further in depth for your personal situation, because everybody's different, for your a call to action would be give us my office a call and we'll set up a time where we can talk about your situation and what might be available for you guys to come up with a plan and potentially some resources that could help out. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to you, Amy.
Thank you very much for that welcome and for this opportunity that you're setting up for your clients. I not only keep my lights on, so to speak, with this long-term care line of insurance, but I'm also the daughter of two people who needed care and an uncle who is in care as well right now. So this is something that I'm passionate about and love to communicate with people about. It can be, you know, an unpleasant thing to think about when we need help due to an aging brain or aging body. But it is important to have a conversation with someone like Thomas and come up with a plan, whether it's your plan to put private insurance in place or to self-fund your care. Have that conversation. And exactly as Thomas has indicated, when you're younger, healthier, actively at work, or just retiring, that's kind of that ideal spot to be visiting about long-term care. What I would like to do real quick is tell you a little bit about myself and my family to take somewhat of the KU Jayhawk sting out of the evening. My son, David, in the center, is finishing his last semester in the Missouri system. He's down at Missouri Science and Technology in Rolla, baseball pitcher. John lives in Colorado with his bride, Katie. So I'm a mother of two adult children. And so that's my little family. My personal story, I think, begins in a love story. My parents both grew up in a town just south of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. When they graduated from high school, my mother went off to nursing school. Dad went to West Point. Upon graduation, they got married and away they went. Frankfurt, Germany, all very fast. Graduation, marriage, out of the country. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 children later, 2 Vietnam tours. My parents have been through thick and thin together. As time has passed, our family's grown. We kids have married and had children of our own. My dad, when he retired from the military, actually worked 10 years as a financial planner, helping military and retired military people with financial planning and insurance, including putting long-term care plans in place for themselves. And my uncle put a plan in place as well. My parents were able to travel when they were in their 60s and 70s and even into their early 80s. My parents, time passes and they age. Both of them ended up needing walkers by age 84. Both of them needed care at the house. Mom needed care due to memory issues, kind of started out with maybe leaving the chocolate chips out of the chocolate chip birthday cake and kind of escalating from there. My father's health is pretty amazing, actually. He had 2 hip replacements, so does need a walker, but both of them, and he needed standby shower assistance, but both of them went on claim at age 84. They had plans in place because of 3 main goals. They wanted not to turn us 5 kids into providers of their care. They wanted to protect assets, and they wanted to stay at home while they aged. And all of those goals were met. They, again, went on claim at age 84, and my mother passed after 3 years on claim, somewhat suddenly. Maybe that's a fortunate thing. And then my father was on claim at home 5 years. And then almost to the day 1 year ago, we transitioned my father to memory care. His memory was failing, and being at home had some real risks. To kind of give a shout out to Home Instead, they helped both of my parents, mom for 3 years, dad for 5. My Uncle Jim is on a policy as well. And he uses Home Instead as well. But like I said, my father transitioned to skilled nursing around Christmas last year. What we will cover today: what is long-term care? Why is the planning important? Medicare and Medicaid, kind of dispelling some myths about public systems, and then looking at the types of plans people can put in place today. And I have to say, in my now, near 20 years in this line of work, this is a fantastic time to be looking. The carriers have listened to people like myself and Thomas and consumers of care. And there are a wider variety of policies available today, and a very wide myriad of ways one can fund an insurance policy today. So what is long-term care? It's when we need assistance with what's called activities of daily living. We don't think about rolling out of bed in the morning and holding our bladder and managing ourselves in the bathroom and taking a shower and getting dressed, making our way out to the kitchen and having breakfast. But as we age, some of those daily activities become more of a challenge to complete. The brain can age as well, causing us to be less safe at home, needing assistance with, have you eaten? Have you taken your pills? Are the bed linens clean and dry, and so forth? So when we need assistance with activities of daily living, long-term care plans come into play. Fortunately, plans available have benefits, whether we're at home, where about 74% of claims are at the house. Interestingly, we think about nursing homes when we think of long-term care, but the claims in nursing homes are more like 10 to 16%. The vast majority of people receive care at home. So wherever you would need care, whether it's at the house, adult daycare, assisted living, nursing home, memory care unit, long-term care benefit plans would have income stream to help pay those care bills. Long-term care is not skilled care, such as when my father needed hip replacements or medication for his eye drops for glaucoma. That's more of that health insurance Medicare space. Long-term care is for more chronic situations, not acute. Okay. So why is planning important with regard to long-term care? This slide tries to demonstrate that we're living longer today. We're having to go hunt and hunt our food and cultivate our food, and labor is easier for most people today. So over time, longevity has increased. After COVID, we've actually slid back a little bit from 80 or 81 to 79 being that average life expectancy for a US citizen. And the longer we live, the greater the likelihood there is of needing care. Care is not inexpensive. Extended care today for, 44 hours or so a week, a home health care agency coming to the house, assisted living where you're residing where the care is, skilled nursing where again you're residing where the care is, and there's more clinicians on staff, more clinical care is needed. You can see, these average care costs for a year of care. They can go up and down from that. The more creme de la creme the facility, the more intensive care. My father, for example, in memory care, his insurance is covering about half of the memory care, whereas it was covering all of it when Dad was at the house receiving care. And this will vary. Different parts of the country will have more expensive care. Care costs are only rising. 5% inflation, and in some places higher than that each year. And so when we look at crafting an insurance plan, if you establish a private meeting to visit about a plan for yourself, your household, we can include a rider on the policy so that the benefits in your policy increase automatically over time, so that the plan stays meaningful against rising care costs in your area. So it's kind of staggering to me, when I look at these sorts of numbers every day, how expensive care can be. Self-funding is certainly there, but as Thomas indicated in his introduction, a long-term care event for one spouse, let alone two, can really upheave even, the best laid financial plans. When my parents received care at the house, by the way, it was 3 hours in the morning. Bill and Joanne, is laundry done? Is the newspaper in from the mailbox? Making sure they had breakfast, their morning meds, maybe putting a load of laundry in, starting the dishwasher. And then the evening, Bill and Joanne, have you taken your evening meds, had some supper? Is the mail up from the mailbox? Let's, get the laundry out of the dryer and make the beds, so this sort of care can make it possible for us to stay at home as we age. There are certain averages. 3 years is an average length of stay that is commonly discussed. My father, like I said earlier, he has had 5 years of care at the house, 1 year in memory care, and kind of still going strong, him and his walker. But on average, you could be looking at these figures for nursing home, assisted living, and home care. And again, most claims are at the house. None of us know, are we going to have 0% chance, one that's not going to need care, like my grandmother Edie, we just don't wake up one morning, or like my parents and my uncle, where we do need care? And are you going to be the average or a more extreme? The longest stay I've heard was an early onset Alzheimer's, 15 years. That's an outlier. So what's your plan? If you don't have insurance, your plan is to self-fund. And so then the conversation is, of my savings and investments, what would I want to cash in first, next, and last to self-fund my care? If you feel that you're going to live a long life, would you not agree that the odds of needing care increases? We have longevity on both sides of my family. And if you need care, have you thought about how that's going to impact not only you, but the ones you love? Who's going to provide your care? How's that going to affect, in this industry, we talk about the adult daughter who oftentimes provides informal care. Does that adult daughter have a job, have children? Families today are rather dispersed. You don't see multi-generation family households as much. So, when you have a conversation with Thomas or amongst yourselves about needing care, think about maybe your oldest living relative and how have they aged? Where did they reside? Who cares for them? Who pays for it? And how's that going? I think when we reflect on our parents, that great aunt or your parents, it makes more real the need and helps. I think when people, I'm 62, and I think when my peers are seeing our parents age, it gives us pause on, do I want my children to be my care provider? Do I want to turn my dining room into, a place for my mom to stay? And so a lot of times people who explore long-term care planning do so not for themselves, but for the ones they love. They want to not burden their children financially or logistically by providing care. My dad was one of those typical men, when the topic would come up earlier in his life, would say, oh, just put me out with Thursday's trash. Well, that's easily said. Medicaid versus Medicare. In the United States, there is a real misunderstanding that the government will provide long-term care for people, will pay for that nursing home, will pay for home care. That's not necessarily the case. With Medicare, Medicare does provide some skilled nursing benefits, but up to 101 days. And the longer one is in care, greater a co-insurance, out of pocket, partially self-funding. And Medicare has nursing home care if you've had a qualified 3-day hospital stay. And so I'll use the example of my grandpa Donley back in Pittsburgh. He went down in the cellar, wasn't supposed to, fell and broke his hip. He had a Medicare need for surgical hip repair and went to a nursing home for physical therapy. He didn't do so well with the anesthesia. He'd been a glass blower and a coal miner, maybe not the strongest of lungs. And so he had some brain issues after that experience. And my grandfather never went home from the nursing home. So Medicare would have covered, initial days, but not an extended situation. And it would not involve home care where most care is provided. So long-term care is for those extended situations beyond that, 3 or 4 month situation. Medicaid. Medicaid is available, again, for skilled nursing care, but for those who financially qualify. It's not just enough to have the clinical need, but there needs to be the financial eligibility as well. Each state has minimum income and asset levels to qualify for Medicaid. And again, it's nursing home oriented, and most people want to stay at home as they age. There are attorneys, elder law attorneys, who specialize in transferring of assets to make clients appear more eligible for Medicaid benefits. But understand that if benefits are transferred to, children or trusts or what have you, depending on the situation, there's a 5-year look back period where Medicaid could say, we can't disregard that asset because you've moved it within the last 5 years. So, just be aware Medicaid is nursing home only, and there's a financial eligibility component to that. So there are private insurance options available. And as I mentioned a few moments ago, we are living at a time where there are a lot more choices than in decades past. Even in my time since 2007, I've seen such growth in options available for people like us to put plans in place. How does one, they use the term trigger, how does one become eligible for long-term care benefits? And basically it's in 2 ways. One, there can be a cognitive issue, an issue with the aging brain where you have significant memory loss and issues from, again, some simple things like my mother would go to the library and forget her route home. But memory issues by themselves can make one eligible for long-term care. Or in, say, the case with my father, the inability to perform 2 of those activities of daily living. Like in my dad's case, he needs standby shower assistance because he's had some nasty falls in the bathroom. That's a very unforgiving, hard surface place to fall down. And my dad needs a walker. So those would be 2 ways to qualify. The inability to feed yourself, dress yourself, bathe yourself, incontinence are ways to trigger one's policy benefits. And by the way, I think of these plans, if you're a visual thinker like I am, I think of them as like a bucket of benefits and a ladle to pay those care bills, right? And just know that when a plan would pay out benefits, that is not a taxable event. So you can receive that income from the policy and pay the bills, or have the policy pay your providers of care directly, and that's a tax-free situation, okay? There are 4 different basic types of plans, and we'll look at each of those. And, through conversation with Thomas, we can learn about your goals, what you envision for your care if you should need it down the road, and look at how you would choose to fund a policy, so that of the portfolio of products that are available, through conversation we can hone in on a plan or plans to look at and see, is this right for me? And there's just such flexibility in the type of plans and the design of plans. And we can, again, narrow that down and illustrate something that fits your needs. And even once a product type is identified, there's lots of flexibility in the design of the plan, how robust you want the benefits to be, or lean and mean. Standalone long-term care. That's what my parents both have. That's what I have. That's what my Uncle Jim has. To use my silly example of like a bucket and a ladle, you've got like a daily or a monthly benefit to dole out and pay care bills. Typically, the buckets of benefits are expected to last 2 to 5 years. There's a few carriers that will last even longer. And then earlier I spoke about inflation options, that care costs keep going up. Do we not want to have a plan that also grows so that that income from the policy stays meaningful against rising care costs? So think of that bucket of benefits as growing automatically over time. and that ladle to pay those care bills growing over time. What's an elimination period? It's a deductible. With most plans, the first 3 months of your care, you would self-fund. And after that, your premium would stop being due and your policy would begin paying and reimbursing your care bills. If you've heard of long-term care policy premiums going up over time, that was true very much so for plans sold in the 80s, 90s, and early 2000s. But in 2012, the industry was able to look back at 3 decades of claims data, and they repriced their products for charging more for women because our claims tend to be later in life and longer than men. So the industry repriced in about 2013, and we haven't seen rate increases on in-force policies since. And please note too, that with these long-term care traditional policies, you've got that annual premium. It's intended to remain level each year while your benefits grow, okay? And when you go on claim, that premium stops, but as the benefits start to pay out. That's a traditional long-term care plan. And by the way, these premiums are tax qualified. So if there's any business owner listeners in the audience this evening, please know that depending on how your business is structured, it could be that your business could pay all or part of that annual premium and even that of your spouse. Here's an example of a policy, kind of a common plan design. A bucket that's designed to last 3 years, the monthly benefit that starts out at $5,000 a month, which is a common average monthly cost of care for home care and assisted living. Inflation rider, so that the bucket of benefits and the monthly benefit grow each year. And again, that deductible where you self-fund your first 3 months of care is pretty common. So that's a pretty basic design. You could go lean and mean with, say, a 3-year or 5. And again, there's some carriers that will go on to lifetime or 6 or 8 years. And it's a matter of the art of this is kind of finding that balance, that sweet spot between a premium with which you're comfortable and the benefits that you seek. Another type of policy is called a linked benefit life hybrid. Lots of words. What basically it means is it's a life insurance kind of chassis product where you can use your death benefit early as a living long-term care benefit. So just think of your ability to take the death benefit gradually, ladling out the death benefit to pay your monthly care bills, as a living benefit. And those plans have a guaranteed premium. You can pay once and done or pay over 10 or 20 years. A lot of people like to pay premiums and then they're retired, have a fully paid in-force policy. Some plans have cash benefits, which means you could pay, Joe Citizen, maybe a nice retired nurse from your church or in your neighborhood, your adult granddaughter. And then you would also have the ability to pay someone from a home health care agency, assisted living, or nursing home. But with a hybrid plan, the policy would work for you or your loved ones. If you don't need long-term care, then upon death, your loved ones would receive the death benefit. So some people like that idea that if I'm going to pay this premium in, I want someone in my family to benefit from it, versus the traditional where it's more like your homeowner's insurance, where if my house doesn't burn down, I don't get my premium back. With a hybrid plan, you've got a living or death benefit available to you. Here's an example of a 60-year-old Missouri man, and he has the ability to pay $100,000 premium. His bucket of benefits by age 80, which is a most common claim age, would be $900,000. His benefit would start out much smaller, but with that compound growth rider, by the time he's 81, would reach $9,100 a month. And then there's that $100,000 death benefit. So if this this 60-year-old Missouri gentleman doesn't need care upon death, his estate, one could argue, is made whole with that death benefit. But if he needs care, look at the leverage. He's, deposited 100,000, but he has the capacity at age 80 to have 900,000 in long-term care benefits. That was one of my parents' motivators, was that the premium you pay in to the benefits you'd receive, that leverage is quite appealing. And here's just a pie chart showing that the contribution is basically the death benefit, meaning the premium. And if you need long-term care, you'd have that whole pie available to you. Another type of product that's available is an annuity hybrid. The annuity hybrids, it's the same kind of concept of a life long-term care hybrid, in that you've got an annuity for the death benefit and you have long-term care. Like with some of these other plans, they can be individual or second to die, meaning you could have a husband and wife on the same policy, to where there's only one death benefit, but there's long-term care for both spouses. And again, as these plans pay out and pay those care bills, that's a tax-free event. The hybrid policies with the annuity chassis can be especially attractive to an older age consumer, somebody in their 70s, even into their early 80s. There's fewer health questions to qualify for an annuity hybrid. And so, I think of annuity hybrids as being more available to older age consumers, or those that have especially declining health. There are fewer health questions to get approved. An accelerated benefit life policy, it's just one kind of bucket of benefits. You've got the death benefit, which you can use early for long-term care. There's not as much leverage with those. If you need long-term care, you're reducing the death benefit to 0, versus the hybrid plan, you've got a much larger long-term care benefit than the death benefit. And with many of these policies, you can pay a premium once and done, or over 5 or 10 or 20 years. Also available is something called a Section 1035 exchange, which is a term that basically means kind of a rob Peter, pay Paul. If you have cash value in a life insurance policy, if you have an IRA that you don't necessarily want for retirement, want to use for long-term care, and a non-qualified annuity, with a Section 1035 exchange, you can take these idle assets that you have and have the money go from that carrier to the carrier with the long-term care benefit in a tax-free way. So I've seen people that maybe have 60,000 in cash value from a death benefit policy, and they don't need the death benefit anymore. And so they're able to take the value from that policy and put it into a hybrid plan where they've got living and death benefits, and they haven't reached into their pocketbook to pay that premium. So, in summary, our goal, I think, here this evening is to give you enough information and hopefully some passion about the risk that's out there, and that there are plans available to help address that. Provide funds to pay people to care for you. If you're interested in having a conversation, with Thomas about your particular situation, share your experience with your aging parents, have a private meeting, and explore what you might want to put in place. I'm a big believer in at least putting a modest plan in place for the income stream that you could have from that policy, not leverage you could have from that policy, but there are ancillary benefits that come with a plan, like caregiver training, having somebody come to the house and say, boy, get rid of those area rugs, they're trip hazards. Or here's where you could put some grab bars in the bathroom or next to your bed to help you stay at home longer. So there's home modification budget. There's caregiver training where someone could come to the house and show you how to change a bed with somebody still in it. Just some ancillary benefits that can help us stay at home while we age. In addition, when you've partnered with an insurance carrier and put a plan in place, you've got that claims representative to help kind of shepherd you into care, someone to help you identify care in your area. How much does that particular place cost? And what kind of standing are they with the county who monitors providers of care? So the idea when you've got the change, the trauma of needing care or your loved one needing care, the idea of having that claims advocate from the carrier to help kind of shepherd you through that, to me, is, you know, almost as valuable as the income you could have to help pay the care bills. I really do encourage you to think about your family and have a conversation with Thomas and see if putting a private plan in place is something that is of interest to you.
Well, thank you very much, Amy. I appreciate your time tonight and very informative, very informative. Right now, I'm going to go ahead and open it up to questions. And if you have any questions, please enter them in the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. And while we give a few seconds here to answer any questions, I was thinking, in my experience, and Amy, maybe it's the same, a lot of my clients, a couple reasons why they're really interested and have pursued some solutions. One is that it's not just for that last stage of nursing home. It's those points that lead up to that. You were talking about earlier, in-home care. You know, hey, does it cover in-home care? We had an advisor in our firm that had two clients, both of them that needed care. They wanted to stay at home. They didn't want to go anywhere. And it was almost $20,000 a month because they had round-the-clock nurses there 24 hours. It wasn't just cleaning and things like that. It was more, they didn't want to go. And so that's a huge expense. But staying home, assisted living, and then ultimately, if you need skilled care, you know. The other thing I hear a lot from my clients is, well, I don't want my children to have to worry about it. I want to leave something for my kids. I'm going to try to protect some of my assets so that all of it doesn't go to the care provider, you know, everything I've worked for all these years in my nest egg. Can I protect some of that? And coming up with those solutions like you talked about that maybe are customized to what our clients are comfortable with, and it provides the benefits that they're looking for.
You're exactly right. And I think it isn't a pleasant topic, right? It's something that I think people put off and put off. The risk of that is sometimes when I get those phone calls or you get those phone calls, sometimes people have waited to the point where maybe there's a diagnosis that makes them ineligible. Maybe they already have memory issues, or they've got a new MS diagnosis, something tragic like that. So having the conversation early, even if you decide initially it's not the right time for me, start that conversation and maybe revisit it year to year when you sit down together. And that way you can have better odds of, I think, success getting a plan in at younger ages. They cost less, they have more time to grow, and underwriting is less involved. The older we get, there might be a home interview versus a telephone call interview. So having the conversation early is a good idea. Again, even if you decide to self-fund your care, at least you know you visited about it, and then you can identify, of my savings and investments, I want to tap into first, next, and last if you don't have insurance.
Well, I'm going to close with, looks like we've done a great job. You've done a great job. We don't have any questions at this time, but I'll close with this. Again, thanking you, Amy, for your time this evening. And thank you guys for joining us this evening. Please, if you have any questions, just reach out to me and we'll talk about it, coming up with a potential solution for you.